Greetings, and welcome back to Doctor Who Revisited, where I go through every single episode of Doctor Who from 1963 all the way to 2022 and review them. And, yep, we are at this after the giant, almost season finale level episode that was the 10th Planet. We move into what is essentially a pseudo season opener, season premiere, I should say, with The Power of the Daleks. Now, obviously, this is still in the middle of season 4, which already had its season premiere and will eventually have a season finale, but, I mean, Smugglers is not a very good season opener, at least in my opinion. I've already talked for about 10 minutes about why I do not like that episode at all. It's another review on this channel that you can go and watch at your own leisure, but the 10th Planet, that was a season finale, a Doctor finale, if you will, and it somehow came right in the middle of an episode. Right in the middle of a season. Like, didn't even wait till the end of a season to drop the bomb on us of introducing a new Doctor. Obviously, this just points to how the show was run completely differently back then, as opposed to seasons of Doctor Who right now. But speaking of which, we gotta talk about the elephant in the room that is the introduction of Patrick Troughton's Doctor. Now, obviously, there's another elephant in the room. Seems to be happening a lot with Doctor Who, especially in the classic series. It's another missing episode, and actually, come to think of it, I'm pretty sure that all 6 parts of the serial are missing. I might be a little off on that, but either way, it's a mostly missing episode. And for the first couple of times I watched this episode originally, when I watched it for the first time, and when I did my first ever rewatch of all the classic Who, I watched the regular recreations or reconstructions. I don't know exactly what to call them. The loose cannon recreations of just static picture with the audio playing in the background and some words flying around on the bottom of the screen, telling you what exactly is happening on screen while you're watching it. This time, however, for this second rewatch, third time watching all of Classic Who for myself, I watched the animated version, the animated reconstruction of Power. I think if you actually go on BritBox, that's like the thing you see when you click on the classic Doctor Who. Like, you see the big Patrick Troughton thing with the title Power of the Daleks, which would lead you to believe that it's actually in color, but if you actually watch the thing on the BritBox, it is in black and white, as it probably should be. I mean, it was that way when it first aired, and I'm not really the biggest fan of the idea of colorizing episodes of Doctor Who. I mean, I get the appeal of it, but to me, that's how the episode was made. That's how it should be looked at. But I mean, that's just nitpicking to the highest degree. Episode itself, I mean, you introduce a brand new Doctor. Like, first of all, you introduce the concept of, yes, this alien being who looks like a human being, but isn't, because, you know, we needed reminding of how this character is not human. They can change their face, and not just that, their whole body, and their personality, and apparently their clothes, because if you actually look, again, of the little that you can actually make out from Patrick Troughton's first few scenes, even if you watch the animated version, or if you watch the few surviving clips from the first episode of Power of the Daleks, Patrick Troughton just gets up wearing a completely different wardrobe than his predecessor. Like, it's weird. Seriously, look that up. William Hartnell was wearing his signature outfit, and then when Patrick Troughton, after he regenerates, wakes up, the only thing that's still the same is that large cloak that William Hartnell was wearing in the 10th Planet, and David Bradley also wore when he revised that character for An Adventure in Space and Time and Twice Upon a Time. So, the Doctor just regenerated his clothes, somehow. I wonder if that will ever be explored again in Doctor Who at some point in the future. Who knows? Now, that bit of weirdness aside, I love how they address the new Doctor, because, like, there's no getting around that. There is no avoiding that obvious side of the conversation. It's like, the lead actor is now different. It's now a different actor. And how do the screenwriters decide to do it? Just have a quick, brief scene of him struggling to adjust to his new life, to his new body, I should say, and then very quickly gets over it, and he moves on. That, I think, was perfect for the time. Now, obviously, in later episodes, when you have regeneration episodes, I think regenerations can be sorted into two categories. The regeneration episode, everything leading up to the regeneration, and the post-regeneration episode, which is the new Doctor settling in, trying to get used to this new body and new persona. And I think that's really the best way to do it. And I think, even though it was the first example of it, the 10th Planet Power of the Daleks transition actually worked around this issue pretty well. Obviously, in more recent episodes, it takes a whole episode for the Doctors to settle into their new body and realize that this is who they are now. And narratively, it's better that way, I think. But with this being the first, the way that they introduced it is just the Doctor has a quick moment in the TARDIS and then just goes on his business, and the audience, and also Ben and Polly in this episode, are left wondering, is it still the same Doctor? Can we trust this guy? What happened to the William Hartnell persona that we're familiar with at this point, and we spent all this time getting used to? So, in a way, Ben and Polly kind of represent the audience, and rather the audience's reaction in 1966 when this happened, when this aired, of just the Doctor regenerating, the Doctor changing their face. I'm pretty sure that the word regeneration hasn't even been mentioned in this episode, and the term of regeneration hasn't even been coined specifically for the Doctor, or rather for the show Doctor Who, but it's a good way of introducing us to this, and it's very relatable for the audience because the characters themselves are going through the same type of journey. Now, throughout the episode, you can actually spot moments when even the Doctor himself is not quite sure of himself, or whether or not he is the Doctor. Even he questions himself being the Doctor at points and at times. But even though it's a completely different personality, the guy, dresses up like a clown, essentially. He plays a recorder, not flute, because there's a difference, apparently, not that I know, but yeah, he's doing all kinds of ridiculous stuff that seems random, but actually have a point to them and a method to the madness. So it's easy to see him as the Doctor, but it's still hard. And it works even better because, like I said, the character himself is struggling to understand this change that happened to him. Now, obviously, this is years before they introduced the concept this is years before this became a regular thing that Time Lords have to do. Again, remember, the name Time Lord hasn't even been mentioned yet, and still won't for another 2 seasons. But this is our introduction to what the process of regeneration does to a person. Like, it's not just that they change their face, and this is a mistake that a lot of people make. They don't just change their face. They become a completely different person, and yet still somehow retain some aspects of the personality of the person that they used to be. Now, moving on from that, the best thing that they can do after that, after the audience has sort of started to accept this idea, is to just dump the characters on a planet and just throw them into the situation and see how they handle it and see how this new Doctor adapts to this new situation. And what better way to exemplify the Doctor being the Doctor than just to put him up against his biggest foes still to this day, they're his biggest enemies, the Daleks. Now, obviously, you know the Daleks are coming. This is a problem that a lot of Dalek stories suffer from, is that they try to make it a secret that the Daleks are coming, even though the name Dalek is literally in the title. Like, it sometimes bothers me with a lot of Dalek stories that they try to make it a surprise, a big reveal, a cliffhanger that, oh look, the Daleks are here. And yet, the story itself is literally called The Something of the Daleks. It happens all over the place. The Power of the Daleks. The Evil of the Daleks. Remembrance of the Daleks. Revelation of the Daleks. Resurrection of the Daleks. Something of the Daleks. It pops up even in the modern series. The modern series is not completely safe from it. Because, like, when they first got introduced, Dalek. That's the name of the first episode that features the Daleks. And even in Daleks in Manhattan, before you even know... And then there's, obviously, in the moment, the big reveal that the Daleks are actually running the show. This is something that the Cybermen don't necessarily have that problem, because a lot of Cybermen stories don't have the word something of the Cybermen in the episode. A lot of them do, obviously, but a lot of Cybermen stories don't have that problem. Now, putting all of that aside, obviously the Daleks themselves, I believe, don't show up until the very end of episode 1, and by that point it becomes quite apparent that this is going to be a Dalek-centric story, and I love the introduction of the Daleks at the end of episode 1, with them just being, presumably, lifeless shells full of cobwebs, and it's like, the Daleks have fallen into complete disuse after however many years of just being stranded on that one planet. Which, by the way, is called Vulcan, which is a little weird because it was around the time that the original Star Trek show was going around, so there was a completely different planet, Vulcan, but we're not really going to get into that. At the moment, moving back to the actual plot itself, I like the Doctor sort of being put in a position that has been thrust upon him, you know, with him finding the dead ambassador, and the person who killed the ambassador and tried to frame the Doctor for it. The Doctor has to figure out what's happening, so he reluctantly accepts the position of this dead ambassador, bringing Ben and Polly into the story mix as well, and just, you know, trying to navigate and figure out who is the actual murderer. It's somehow this Dalek story, which is also a post-regeneration story, in addition to all that, becomes a sort of detective story where you supposedly follow this Dalek plot, but in the meantime the Doctor has his own agenda, in a way, trying to figure out who is really responsible for killing that one ambassador. And obviously the best way to do that is by pretending to be the person who's supposedly dead, being the person on the inside, trying to figure all that stuff out. Now, obviously, as usually happens in a lot of Doctor Who stories, the Doctor warns people of something, in this case being the Daleks, and no one listens to him. And I brought up the example of Dalek, the first episode in the modern series that reintroduces the Daleks. Again, the Doctor tries to warn everybody that the Daleks are massive killers, that they killed his whole planet, or rather they helped slaughter his whole planet, and no one really listens to him until it's far too late. The Dalek escapes and starts shooting people. And this is really more or less what happens in this episode, except this time, the scientist that at the time revives the Dalek and hopes to use it for the good of mankind, learns of the existence of more Daleks, and actually starts to believe the Doctor, but the people with him have their own agenda. And one of them even uses one of the Daleks to usurp control and effect the coup. And this is where one of the instances where I would say that the animated reconstruction of the episode really does help, because it really does help to flesh out the world. And again, I never watched the original episode because it has happened several decades before I was born. And as a matter of fact, I'll clue you in on a bit of a secret. It aired before my mother was born, so you can kind of guess why I never watched the original episode. That being said, however, the animated one really does help to give you the understanding of this human colony of Vulcan in a way that you could never really understand with the standard loose cannon recreation or reconstruction or whatever you want to call it. So again, people abusing the Daleks to their own means while the Daleks are doing their own thing. And this is a really smart storytelling beat that a lot of Dalek stories have. In fact, the best Dalek stories have is that you don't just have the Daleks being their own generic thing, doing the same thing that they've done in 100 other stories. You introduced a second and third element into the story, in this case, one of them being the new Doctor post-regeneration, but the other one being the subplot of the murdering of the ambassador and the coup that the person is trying to do. So you have the Daleks as the Daleks as secondary villains, and the one guy that takes over the colony as the main villain who uses the Daleks to his own advantage, and then obviously the Daleks pull the rug under his feet and turn the tables on him. So it's a really clever Dalek story. It's not really my favorite. I will say that I love that we get to see the Daleks in their true proper form, the squiggly squid mutated creature inside the casing. Again, we haven't actually got a good look at one when they pull one out in the first Dalek story, and I've already said that I don't like how the Dalek mutant looked like in the Doctor Who and the Daleks Peter Cushing movie. So seeing a Dalek for the first time and seeing actually a Dalek in an open casing for the first time, that was really good. I like that. And again, I'm only talking about the animated version because that's really the only version that I can talk about at the moment. But I love that they just showed us how Daleks are made, essentially. And this is, I think, the most Daleks you've ever seen on screen at that point. Because yeah, there's this great scene of the Daleks yelling, "Exterminate, annihilate, destroy," and there's like seemingly hundreds of Daleks, when obviously in reality there were just a couple of Daleks and a few stand-ins. But I mean, it has the effect that there are a lot of Daleks in this story. And I love the way that all the Daleks eventually get blown up at the end. But yeah, other than that, I think I pretty much talked about all I can. Love the introduction of the Doctor. I love how they split the load with the villains between the Daleks and the humans in the colony who are trying to usurp power and control. But yeah, other than that, it's good. I mean, Patrick Troughton is not one of my favorite Doctors. He might actually close to the bottom of my list. I still love him. I love Patrick Troughton as the Doctor. Do not get me wrong. I do not hate any of the Doctors, especially not the main ones on television. It's just Patrick Troughton, for whatever reason, it just seems like the odd one out compared to some of the other Doctors, which is ironic because he did introduce a lot of elements that came to define the Doctor character still to this day, but for whatever reason, he just doesn't feel as Doctor-y-ish-esque as any of the others. So, and again, not to say that I don't like him, I still do very much enjoy his stories, but I do like the stories more than I like the Doctor, if that makes any sense. And you're going to see more of that moving forward as we talk about some of his other stories, which are among my favorite stories in Doctor Who, even though it's far from my favorite Doctor. So yeah, that's I think it for today. And let me know what you think about Power of the Daleks, and what did you think about the reintroduction of the Doctor character as this new persona, the Patrick Troughton persona. Let me know all that in the comments below, and I'll end with a sentence that became iconic in the modern series for a different reason, but debuted actually in this episode. I am your servant. Hi there. Thank you for watching the video. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends. I'll see you next time.